What's going on, folks? Welcome into another episode of the Johnnies Report. Recording this episode on this Friday evening as we discuss a get to know you episode on St. John's newest forward, Bryce Hopkins. Of course, I say newest forward, new to the program this upcoming season, Bryce Hopkins. And we'll be talking about getting to know you and stuff like that as we go over some of his background, where he's been, some of the accolades he brings, and how he'll help St. John's in the 2025-2026 season. Well, Bryce Hopkins has been someone that Rick Pitino said when he first brought him in, said he reminds him a lot of Zuby Ejiofor from a personality standpoint, selfless, humble, hardworking, has outstanding talent. When he worked him out before signing him, impressed with his abilities in so many areas. But Bryce Hopkins, as we know, if you've been, of course, following Big East basketball for a long time, you know that what Bryce Hopkins brings. However, if you don't, we'll be talking about that in a minute. Pitino also went on to say he's going to be a great replacement for what they are losing with R.J. Lewis. So, first, let me just add, if you hear any breaks or anything or a potential sniffle, I've been dealing with, funny enough, COVID for this past week. I know I didn't think you could catch COVID in the year of our Lord 2025 in the summertime, but here I am. Third time having it, and glad that it wasn't similar to my first time having it, which led me to be in St. Vincent's Hall at St. John's for a total of 15 days. That's a story for another time. But when we talk about Bryce Hopkins and what he brings to the table for this St. John's team, you have to look back at what was a season that felt like it kind of came out of nowhere. There was really no sort of hype around him necessarily heading from Kentucky to Providence. He, of course, started his collegiate basketball career off with John Calipari and his Kentucky Wildcats. Played sparingly in the 2021-2022 season. Got in 28 games, but averaged just 6.5 minutes. Only had 2 points per game that year, so decided to join Ed Cooley's team with the Friars. A former 4-star recruit, and according to 24/7 Sports nationally, he was ranked 44th. Now, when he transferred to Providence again, it really was not nationally a huge deal per se, and he just seemed like he really came out of nowhere in that 22-23 season. He'd go on to average 16 points per game, shot 36% from beyond, 45% from the field, started in all 33 games for Providence, averaged 34.9 minutes per game, and, averaged 8 boards as well. And it felt like at the end of that year, which saw him earn first team All Big East honors, obviously, it felt like Bryce Hopkins and his following year campaign was only going to see him get better. But unfortunately, those hopes were quickly dashed 14 games into the season when he tore his ACL. And in that 23-24 season, he had been averaging 15 points per game. His three-point percentage was down. It was at 19%. He was shooting 43% from the field, however, and averaged 9 boards per game. So when you talk about that 3-point percentage, which clearly had a dip from one year to the next, he was averaging 2.3. Well, we'll round it. 3-pointers attempted in that 22-23 season. It was up to 3.8, so we'll put it at 4 for the 23-24 campaign. So he quickly, at least it seemed like, was going to make the adjustment to be more of an outside shooter under Kim English. This past year, he dealt with injuries throughout the season. He only got to play in 3 games and, was effective, averaged 17 points, was hitting 40% from beyond. Of course, it's 3 games, so, and 40% from the field. Now, one thing with Bryce Hopkins that I see some people throwing around there is he could potentially be a replacement for even a Kadari Richmond, and with everything that Hopkins can do. Now, I'd like to think we have a lot of depth in this year's team. Not saying we didn't have depth last year, but I think we have more quality depth this year that St. John's won't have to rely on Bryce Hopkins to be like Kadari Richmond, who needed to do everything and anything, not only because he was just so darn good at it, but because the team really relied on him that much. I really think we have guys that can be able to be more of a slasher, a guy that can get to the cup at will, which I think Bryce Hopkins can do, but we'll have other guys that can do that as well, that can rebound, that can play stout defense, that, the one thing we had last year, and I know RJ Lewis was tremendous at it and what he showed in the 23-24 season. Obviously, he did it last year as well. But Kadari Richmond's ability to pass and, the ability to create, get his teammates involved. That's something that is, I think you have that playmaker ability with a bunch of different guys on the team, including Bryce Hopkins. But in terms of the production standpoint, I don't know. I tend to think we wouldn't see anything compared to Kadari. What intrigues me the most is obviously him being, as close to 100% as he can be to start the season, which all signs are pointing towards that's going to be what we're going to anticipate. And also someone that, hey, he's missed time the last 2 years. He's missed 17. He's only played in 17 games. So you've lost about, roughly 40 odd some games due to injury. I would like to say for this season, if, he can just stay healthy for the regular season, missing hopefully not many games, but max like 3 or 4, that in all likelihood we could see what we had last year in RJ Lewis, a player that, again, can create off the bounce, an on-ball scorer. RJ was something that Johnnies fans hadn't seen at that level and God knows how long, and hopefully Bryce Hopkins can continue that when healthy. But another thing is just straight up leadership. I mean, you talk about the different coaches he's been under, Calipari, Cooley, even Kim English. Now being with Rick Pitino, it's a veteran guy. It's a guy that's a hard worker. It's someone that can hopefully come in and you're not going to miss a beat from what you had last year. The one thing from the 23-24 team and the 24-25 team was there was a lot of guys that you had a lot of turnover. And there was already an established culture. Well, this year, while you are returning, Zubi Ejiofor, Ruben Prey, just to name a few. You are and Sadiku, you expect to bring in guys that are that are top transfer portal players, no doubt about it. But you're expecting to bring in guys that will be able to fit like a glove and understand right away, the culture that Rick Pitino and his staff has been building towards this year 3. And when you look at, according to 24/7 Sports, again, to back that up, Bryce Hopkins is the 16th overall player. He's a 4-star transfer portal addition. He's the 3rd highest ranked power forward in the portal. Funny enough, he's actually behind former one-time St. John's commit Yaxel Landenborg and Darion Williams, who goes from Texas Tech to NC State. Just wanted to throw that little Yaxel Landenborg in there, who is a 5-star transfer portal get for Michigan. Just had to plug that. But anyways, that is all the reasons right there how I think he will be able to help St. John's, how he's going to be able to come in and, again, really fit. Those are all the reasons why I think he's really going to come in and fit like a glove for this St. John's team. And hopefully we'll get to see that in full display to start the season coming up in just under 50 days now, folks. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll be back on to continue this little mini series we'll be doing here. I get to know you for this upcoming St. John season. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to Big East Energy. Follow at the Johnnies Report on Twitter, and be sure to leave a like below. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you next time.